Hello everyone, I'm Lauren and welcome to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. If you're looking to stock a new tank that is about 40 litres and you're wondering what fish you can keep in it, then luckily for you there are many very lovely species for you to choose from. Just to point out, 40 litres is rather small, so it's best to set it up as a species-only aquarium, so not to risk overstocking it. Then you can take your time and get it just right and perfect for a fish that you are really looking forward to keeping to. But let's take a look at 5 lovely species that might take your fancy. And first on my list is possibly the most famous of all tropical fish and the one most people know about, even if they know nothing about tropical fish, and that is of course the neon tetra. Personally, I tend to think of these as dentists' fish, as they always seem to be in large aquariums in dentists' waiting rooms. And not surprisingly, their vibrant colours and gentle schooling nature is the perfect relaxing distraction from all the pain and expense you're about to go through. But unfortunate associations aside, these calming little fish grow to about 1.5 inches on average, and so a school of 6 will fit very comfortably into a 40-litre tank. Especially if it's been well planted in a jungle or Amazonian style, but they also look absolutely fantastic in black waterscapes as well. It really shows off that beautiful blue-green stripe that runs down the body. But that's not to say they need a darker tank. Neons are very, very brave in practically any situation, and they will be out and about even in really quite bare tanks. For the most part, neon tetras are docile and will happily live alongside each other as well as other small fish, with little more than the occasional chase just to show a bit of dominance. Like a lot of tetras though, they can be rather boisterous at meal times, and so if you're thinking about keeping them with a shy species, you will want to make sure that everybody is getting a share of the food. All in all though, these are your quintessential easy to buy, easy to keep fish. They very rarely suffer from any issues once they reach adulthood, they're not going to cost you very much, and they are readily available. The next fish on my list is slightly more challenging to find, but well worth the wait, and that is the Pygmy corydoras. Pygmy cories are a tiny little version of their more famous larger cory cousins. Typically they only grow to about an inch in length, and that will be quite a large specimen. While they can be kept on bare sand or gravel, these tiny little catfish certainly do appreciate a complicated substrate. That is, they like to have things to explore and swim around, such as leaves and pebbles and bits and pieces and twigs, all sorts of things that are going to trap food and mulm and give the pygmies somewhere to concentrate their feeding efforts. They are also baskers though, and pygmies love to rest either as a group or as individuals on leaves and other bits of hardscape. When they're not feeding or resting, pygmies do swim periodically in the middle of the tank, rather than staying resolutely on the bottom like other cories do. They will occasionally spend a small amount of time sort of hover swimming and moving around in small groups and sometimes even schooling with other small fish, while they look for a new feeding ground before they once again drop back onto the substrate and start snuffling around. Like all small catfish, Pygmy cories are utterly harmless and not particularly good at competing with fish that swim in the higher levels of the tank. They're not even very good at competing with snails, and so these are ones you really need to watch if you're keeping something like neon tetras above them. They can be kept along all the other fish on this list though. Being such a small bottom-feeding fish, pygmies are perfect for keeping with another group of middle or top-level fish in the same tank without the risk of over-competition for swimming space. Just don't go crazy with the numbers and know the limitation of the tank. Basically, if you have 6 neons in the tank, you can add another 6 little pygmies, but don't add anything else or you're going to really struggle to keep that tank balanced. Now the largest fish in this list is also one of my absolute favourites and that I would happily wax lyrically about all day long, and that is the sparkling gourami. These do grow to about 1.5 to 2 inches, but as they like to be kept in a small group, they are still perfectly comfortable in a 40-litre aquarium. They are absolutely charming fish to keep, though they are perhaps a tad pickier than the others on the list when it comes to their home style. Sparklers really do prefer a dimly lit tank, with lots of nice dark hiding places including plants and sticks and bits of wood, anything that's going to give plenty of dark shadows for them to lurk in. In brightly lit tanks they soon look very washed out and pale, and they can even die from stress if they can't find anywhere to hide. But if you do give them those shadows, then they will not fail to impress you with their brilliant blue, shimmering iridescence and their pleasantly curious personalities. Ideally, you will want to keep 3 to 4 of these little beauties, and if at all possible, it is worth trying to get either an equal number of males to females, or slightly more females. This is just because the males can be a little bit feisty with each other, and they will fight over territory as well as the females. These fights don't come to blows, and the fish are actually very entertaining to watch when they're arguing, because the males will croak angrily at each other loud enough for you to hear through the glass, but they won't do each other any damage. One thing to point out though is that sparklers are active hunters, and if you plan on keeping shrimp in your tank as well, then don't expect many of the shrimplets to survive. Next on the list is a fish that is very similar in some ways to the very abundant neon, and that is the Harlequin rasbora. These two are brave even in the very brightest of situations, although they do like there to be some plants in their tank with them, as they use the undersides of leaves for breeding. Harlequins are slightly shorter than a neon, growing to about an inch in length, and of course they have this very characterful pink coloration that's really not that common in freshwater fish. And so they can make a fantastic addition to carefully scaped tanks, ones that need a pretty fish that looks good and creates constant movement, but doesn't draw the viewer's eye away from the manicured planting and the carefully arranged rocks. They also have the huge benefit of being very beginner mistake friendly for such a small fish. Harlequins are well adapted to cope with really quite poor water conditions, and so if you're new to the hobby and you're worried about making the inevitable mistakes that all new fish keepers make, then these just might be the right fish for you. A group of 6 to 8 would be very happy in a 40-litre tank, and if you can supply them with some fine leaves, then you will find they will very readily breed for you, which is fascinating behaviour to see, and in a densely planted tank you may well find a few of the fry manage to survive. Squabbles do occasionally break out between males, and they will swim alongside each other and flare their little fins, displaying to each other, but this is primarily ceremonial, and they are really just showing off for the females, as Harlequins are quite peaceful and rarely cause each other any damage. And the last and smallest fish on this list is the diminutive ember tetra, coming in at a measly 1.5 to 2 centimetres in length. They really are a tiny little species. And that does of course mean you can keep a few more of them in your 40-litre tank. 10 will happily live in a tank of this size and still have plenty of space to swim around. Not that ember tetras necessarily need very much space. These are some of the laziest little fish I have ever kept. Perfectly happy to just very slowly scull around in the tank, looking for the easiest possible meal to be had. They certainly can swim fast, don't get me wrong. They can positively rocket if they need to, and they are devils to catch once they know that you're after them, but for the most part, low effort seems to be their motto. And this is perfect if you are looking to create that relaxing tank to gaze into whilst you take a break from work, or ponder your next task. Embers are always on the move, but they do so calmly and with purpose, rather than just dashing about the place like your average Danio does. They are perhaps the modern version of the neon, and maybe more of them should be seen in dentists' waiting rooms. A 40-litre tank is a tantalising thing. You can really enjoy setting one up to be absolutely perfect for that fish of your choice, and so long as you don't overpopulate it, then it will be just as stable and low maintenance, and above all, just as beautiful and enchanting as a larger setup. The hardest part is picking just the right fish for you. Anywho, I hope you've enjoyed this little video all about 5 of my favourite fish for a 40-litre tank. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!